Joe Small Talk. We are doing our first ever NBA podcast. As you probably all know, the NBA Draft happened on Thursday night, 2013 draft. And we are joined by my friend, Johnny. Johnny, say hello to your new fans out there.
Hello there.
Johnny.
America and the global community.
Now, Johnny's a salesman, I want to tell my fans, which means Johnny has a way with words. He's a little bit of a huckster and a hustler. Probably similar to many GMs out there. And, well, Johnny, let's get right into it.
Let me just say this. I could have had the opportunity to be sitting with Joe Dumars in the draft room over this past Thursday night. I might have botched that one, but that's a story for another podcast.
That's an inside joke. I don't think many people will understand unless you elaborate.
Well, I think that's probably a story for another podcast. I dated somebody who had an in with the Pistons organization.
You dated a girl. I just want to tell my listeners, you dated a girl who had connections to the Pistons organization. So if you would have married her, you'd be hobnobbing with Joe Dumars at the draft, pretty much.
That's true. That's true.
Which is insane.
I would have been, all over him about getting Ben McLemore, actually. But
well, you'll have to be happy with Contavious Caldwell Pope.
Exactly. Yeah. KCP.
Yeah. Well, you thought McLemore was a good fit in the Pistons?
Listen. I mean, McLemore was the most talented guy in the draft. He's the most upside.
Isn't it crazy? Everyone keeps saying he had the most talent in the entire draft. How did somebody with the most talent in the entire draft, who's likely going to be probably the best scorer in the draft, fall to number 7? I mean, I know they said he had character issues, but I watched some of the interviews. He seemed like a good, solid guy. I don't know. I think GMs get scared.
Well, one thing that I'm sure Bill Simmons, who was commentating in the draft, wanted to say, I don't know if you saw the interview with
I saw
with him. Did you see what he said? Right when to Shane Battier?
Remind me?
He said, I'd like to say hi to my brother who's locked up right now.
Oh, that's what McLemore said?
McLemore said that, yeah.
Simmons didn't say anything, though, in response to that.
No, I mean, I'm sure if he did a draft diary, he would have said something, but he's up there on the podium. He can't, laugh hysterically at the fact that this guy's saying hi to his brother who's locked up. It's one thing to say, say hi to my brother who's, in prison right now, locked up. I thought it was really funny. Is that just me?
Yeah, no, there might be some racial undertones to that. No comment from the Joe Small Talk team. But you know what? The funny thing about the draft was that nobody had any idea that Bennett was being taken number 1, except for the inner core of the Cleveland organization, right? I feel like Cleveland was getting credit not for taking Bennett, but for keeping it a surprise. The takeaway from the draft wasn't that it was a good draft, but that it was just so entertaining because of all the surprises and, I guess it was. We don't know enough about Bennett, right? It's too hard to project if he's going to be an all-star, but what's his name? Dan Gilbert and friends think that this guy is going to be a stud. Apparently he's supposed to be an 18-8 guy right away, right off the bat. We don't know enough about him.
I saw a few games just in the tournament with him, and I read up a lot back in the tournament. I don't know. They could have gotten him with the 4th pick, and why not trade down? I'm sure they tried to trade down.
No, I can't imagine they would get anything for that pick. If they would have traded the 1st for the 4th, what else could they have gotten? A second rounder? I don't think that.
Well, then they don't have to pay him number 1 pick money. It's a little bit less,
Right, but why even take 5% chance of not getting your man?
I don't know. I think they didn't really have a pick. There was no consensus pick. They were like, you know what? Let's just take somebody. Oladipo is a nice player who's he's like a defensive specialist kind of guy. He's possibly a little bit overrated.
I think Oladipo, the media got a little bit too happy with Oladipo leading up to the draft. He was like the sexy pick, but he still can't shoot from what I remember. I know his three-point shooting improved, but they say he's going to be a better version of Tony Allen, which for the 2nd pick in the draft, it's a little bit high. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. Jury's out on him, and then Otto Porter. They say he's like a Tayshaun Prince kind of guy. Who knows? I wouldn't have taken Zeller at number 4 like the Bobcats. He looks like a stiff to me.
Well, Zeller was probably the most interesting pick of the draft because of who else was available. the fact that the Bobcats were at 4 with the opportunity to take Alex Len, Nerlens Noel, and McLemore, and those were 3 potential number 1 picks, and they're all waiting for you at number 4. It was kind of shocking that they took Zeller, but I think, from what I read, they wanted a guy who was. I think Zeller might be more of a guarantee than Len and Noel in terms of production. I think maybe a better version of Hansborough. I'm not saying that's a good pick necessarily, but a guy who will contribute immediately. Whereas Noel and Len, it's going to take them a few years to.
Yeah, with Zeller, I know that GMs and coaches like the fact that he played at Indiana, which is obviously a very strong program with a strong coach and all that kind of thing. He looks like a stiff to me. He's another. Who's that guy that the Suns had? Oh, Zarko Chaparkapa.
Zarko Chaparkapa? No, I don't actually. Oh wait, Kabarkapa. Yeah. Kabarkapa, yeah.
He's another Zarko Chaparkapa.
Well, if he turns into a better version of Tyler Hansborough, would you say that's a good pick for number 4?
He's not a Tyler Hansborough. Hansborough is a rugged, tough, Psycho T kind of player. You saw in the playoffs this year, he was really tough defensively. Zeller is more of like, skilled big man who can hit shots up to 20 feet. And he's just really tall. He has a good offensive game, but Hansborough can hit that shot, but he's also knocks guys down in the paint, a little bit more of an enforcer, I would say.
Yeah, well, Zeller also got to the line a lot. Nobody talks about that, and he'll get immediate buckets. And maybe playing alongside Bismack Biyombo will be a good 1-2 punch in the paint. I don't know.
Bismack. Everybody forgot about Bismack already.
Yeah, that was another thing, by the way. The presence of, ironically, this isn't ironic, it's just funny that the fact that they had Bismack Biyombo in the paint means they couldn't take a guy like Nerlens Noel because, Bismack apparently learned how to play basketball at age 17, something crazy, he's probably the most raw offensive player in the NBA, and you can't take a guy like Noel who still has no moves, or not too many.
Well, the rub on Noel was a few things. First of all, they said his entourage is like historically awful.
Well, that was nobody was sure about that. Russillo spoke on the Simmons podcast, and he got heat for that, basically criticizing the Noel camp. But he was saying because nobody can get in touch with them, and he didn't,
Listen, Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, had a meeting set up with Noel.
Yeah.
And Noel didn't come to the meeting.
Yeah, maybe he got busy. Maybe they ran out of gas. I don't know.
Think so? I don't know. The ACL tear, he's 7 foot, 205 pounds. It was a big gamble. This was one of the worst drafts ever, but exciting just because of all the uncertainty. I think the number 1 pick, I don't know, maybe you'd agree, most surprising number 1 pick ever. Can you think of a more surprising pick?
That's what they're saying. People were shocked. If they would have taken Noel, then it would not have been too surprising. But yeah, beyond him, anyone taken. There was one NBA writer who had Bennett as a potential number 1 pick, but otherwise nobody else had him. Everyone said either maybe Oladipo, Len, Noel. Some people said McLemore, but it wasn't even close.
Let me ask you this, Joe Smalltalk. What do you think of the Pelicans trade with the Sixers for Drew Holiday, the Noel trade?
It's tough to say. It was funny because when they took Noel, Chad Ford basically, wet his pants talking about the tandem with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
They have the greatest defensive presence in the paint in the history of the game. Okay, calm down, Chad Ford.
Chad Ford's prone to hyperbole, as we know.
Right.
A whole lot.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it's just funny. And then, look, the Pelicans had to do it. They got back an all-star for a guy who isn't playing next year and who has no offensive game. And, Noel's a big question mark. And they got a guaranteed all-star who was on a pretty decent contract. I think Holiday signed for 4 years, $40 million, whatever. I think the Pelicans had to do it, and I think the Sixers got the lower end of the deal. I don't know. That's my opinion. Because everybody keeps saying how they got Noel and Carter Williams, and this is going to be their future. Carter Williams, I don't understand how you can call him your future. He's not going to step in right away to fill Holiday's shoes. He can't shoot. Right?
Carter Williams reminds me of, remember that guy who went to UConn? He's the guy who stole laptops, he's the point guard.
Marcus Williams, yes.
Marcus Williams, that you saw in UCLA.
I'll tell you, I saw Marcus Williams play.
Story about who was in his phone that the name he was texting.
I saw Marcus Williams play in the UCLA in the summer in the gym, and before I get to the cell phone, Marcus Williams held his own against, I remember, O.J. Mayo. Mayo looked very, very pedestrian playing with a bunch of basically kind of college-level fringe NBA types. And I remember, Mayo was very pedestrian. And I remember Byron Russell was one of the go-to players in the team. He was 40. This is like 3 years ago. And then Marcus Williams was the point guard on the opposite team. And he was playing very well. He was, he was driving in at will, whatnot. But then I remember they took a break, and I walked over. I didn't say hi because, Williams is kind of scary. He's a big 6'3" guy. And anyways, I looked over his shoulder and I see he's texting on his phone. And he's texting, I think, with a girl based on what I was able to see. And the name of the girl was Kitchen on his cell phone. So he was texting.
Why do you surmise that her nickname might be Kitchen?
I'm assuming that he had sexual relations with a girl in the kitchen. And he now refers to her as Kitchen on his cell phone. But I'll never forget that. I remember seeing the word kitchen as a contact name in Marcus Williams' phone. But you know what? He played well, and I think if I was a GM, I would sign him. I mean, based on what I saw, Mayo is right now should be a $7 to $8 million player, and I don't know. This is another thing I wanted to get to, but we'll talk about it now. There's so many guys out there who I feel like could play in the NBA, who they aren't just because the media doesn't talk about them.
God Shamgod, your favorite
God Shamgod at one point had the greatest handle in the world, apparently, according to some media types.
No, this is 15 years ago.
No, but okay, I know I like to talk about God Shamgod. Darius Rice was another guy I think could still play in the NBA today. But how hard is it? I mean, if you're a lights-out three shooter, why are you not in the NBA? I never understood why that year. Remember that year from Duke? We had those 4 guys who were drafted in the first round with Elton Brand, William Avery, the point guard. There was another shooter. I'm forgetting Trajan Langdon, lights out shooter. Both those guys flamed out. I never understood why. I don't know.
You're right. I mean, if you have one elite skill in the NBA, you should be able to play. I mean, tons of guys just 3-point shooters. Guys like James Jones. He's been in the league 7-10 years or something on the Heat.
Well, Jones,
he can shoot threes.
Right, but he kind of fell out of the rotation, and that's a different story. But you look at the roster like the Knicks or the Nets, who have decent starting fives but thin benches. A guy like Darius Rice couldn't come in and give them 12 to 15 minutes a game. Kind of like Rodney Rogers used to do, similar type of player. I don't think GMs are creative enough in terms of, they keep looking at potential in 18-year-old guys. But Chris Copeland was a 29-year-old guy who's going to get probably $10 million this summer. There must be 100 guys like that out there, no?
Yeah,
Chris Copeland types.
Remember that guy Morris Almond?
Oh, the Knicks signed?
I think the Knicks signed. He's like a D-League lifer. He's a great 3-point shooter. I think Utah initially signed him, drafted him. But he never played substantial minutes in the league, and he killed the D-League for years. And I don't know, I kind of agree with you in that. I'm sure you bring that guy up to the NBA. He'll hit some threes. He'll score a little bit. A lot of it is character. A lot of it, I'm sure, is political with agents. Even thinking about a guy like James Jones, he's very active in the Players Association.
Yeah, and he has a career afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, teams like to have those guys on their roster. There's some cachet. They're very influential.
What about Roger Mason? He's an influential guy in the NBPA, and he's out of the league, I think, right now.
Well, I think after his tweet saying, looking like a season, how are you? It was tough, right? Which was maybe the funniest tweet that I've ever read.
It wasn't. That tweet was not inappropriate. It was, it was funny, and we all appreciated it as fans. I mean,
the funniest part about it is the how are you.
Yeah. Giving a little taste of the vernacular of the NBA locker room.
And there were so many subsequent how you tweets from the likes of Ken Berger and Chad Ford and Jay Billis afterwards.
Oh, Chad Ford got in the action?
I don't know. Maybe Chad Ford, he's a little more vanilla. He's busy watching old tapes of Darko in his basement somewhere.
Yeah, that was a big theme this year because everyone's talking. This is now 10 years after the famous 2003 draft, and people are saying how next year's draft might be the best one since '03. So there were quite a few recaps, both podcasts and articles about the 2003 draft, and we were talking about this earlier. How the Milicic stuff in retrospect is so crazy, just how it came about. Dumars was watching. He didn't even know who that guy was, who Milicic was when he was shooting in the gym.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's funny in retrospect. I mean, I was what I was telling you before. Milicic, you don't think? I mean, let's say he would have been drafted third by the Nuggets, and he would have played under. Who was the coach at the time? It wasn't Carl, was it?
I don't think so. I don't remember who.
But I just think Milicic didn't get a fair shake, and I don't think he would have been the next Nowitzki. But
might have been Carl.
But
I know what you mean. Listen, Larry Brown was never known for playing rookies. He's kind of an old school guy. Wasn't interested in developing rookies, and his team won the championship that year. So it's not like he did anything wrong.
Yes,
He destroyed Darko's confidence.
Right, yeah, a lot of parallels between Milicic and Kwame Brown. Not just they were busts, but I think just the way they came into the league and the situations, the pressure that they faced really killed them,
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Actually, the guys from this year's draft don't have that much pressure on them. They can just go out and play.
Yeah, Bennett, he doesn't give a crap.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If you think about it, people don't talk a lot about Anthony Davis. It was just last year. I don't hear a lot about him, do you?
It's true. I mean, there was so much fanfare, but I think he gets 2 or 3 years to become that perennial all-star. So he still has that grace period, I feel like, of another year, I would say. Also, Austin Rivers' shockingly bad season, I kind of gave Davis a little bit of breathing room.
Possibly the worst season in NBA history.
Yeah, but funnily enough, Austin Rivers did not come to the defense of Doc Rivers with the little brouhaha between their father and Simmons. Unlike, what's the name of the other brother? Jeremiah. Jeremiah Davis went off, and a little back and forth between Simmons and Jeremiah Davis.
Rivers,
yeah. So what did you think about that? I feel like when Simmons, it's kind of funny to watch him now as a TV analyst coming from the writing background, because we all grew up reading Simmons on Page 2 and even before that when he wrote for AOL. But
you read him on AOL?
I may have received an email or two from the Sports Guy column. Anyways, we won't talk about that. But don't you think? Was it fair for him to say that Rivers quit on the Celtics? I mean, are other commentators, like, would Jalen Rose ever say anything like that?
Jalen wouldn't, because he's part of that NBA fraternity, and Simmons has been killing Rivers for years. I mean, if you remember back when the Celtics were terrible
before the championship, yeah,
from like whatever it was, 05 to when did the Celtics win? 07 or 08? He would kill them constantly in his columns and talking about how Rivers had no plan and how they had no. If you listen to that, the podcast we keep mentioning, Priscilla and Simmons podcast, Rivers had no plan for defending pick and rolls, and once Thibodeau came around, that's when and Garnett and Pierce and Allen, that's when things turned around. But I don't know. Rivers is very, very well liked by the media.
It's true. That was one of the stories within the story, how he got a free pass for this kind of whole shady bit about jumping ship because the media loves him. And it just showed how much cachet he had with the media, that he wasn't really criticized for jumping ship. It's kind of interesting.
It's pretty unusual for this kind of transaction, a coach being essentially traded for a pick. And I'm sure that Rivers engineered part of it. And it's possible that the Celtics engineered part of it. They didn't want such an expensive coach, on the books for a rebuilding team. And he doesn't get along well with Rondo, supposedly. And the funniest thing, though, was, in the middle of the draft, Simmons said he quit. And Rivers shoots back with, "I'm too classy to call him an idiot." Essentially calling him an idiot.
Right. It's a little clever way of calling him an idiot.
It was the most compelling part of the draft, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. But I guess there are two things to it. Just like, as you said, Boston was happy to let him go just because they got out of his, enormous salary. But at the same time, if Rivers would have announced publicly that he's sticking with Boston and he's going to turn them into a contender in 3 years, they would have been happy to pay him. Wes Grobeck, whoever you pronounce his name, would have been
Wick Grossbeck.
whatever. He would have been happy to pay him all that money. So I think it was a little bit of both. I think both sides contributed to it. But
yeah. I mean, it's the Eastern Conference changed overnight. Look at the Nets. I mean, their starting five is really strong. I mean, it remains to be seen whether or not Joe Johnson will come off the bench, give him a little, scoring punch, because Johnson and Pierce are a little bit redundant,
They are redundant, but as you just said, their bench, I mean, who's on the bench now? They lost Marshawn Brooks. C.J. Watson was not re-signed, I don't think. And I think, by the way, Reggie Evans was included in the trade, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was he's good.
I didn't understand that because Boston wants to suck next year. They don't want to be good. Evans was a very effective player, and he signed for 3 years, $5 million. He would be in his second year. I mean, I guess if Danny Ainge kind of demanded him, they would give it. But I was kind of surprised that was a little throw-in. I didn't like that from the Nets side because they have no backup.
I guess for salary cap reasons, maybe they needed to include him.
I don't think so. I mean, he makes so little money. Their front court now is brittle. Nobody, Lopez and Garnett is nice, but Lopez is a 29, 30-minute a game guy, and as is Garnett. So they need another full-time player. And Andre Blatch, I don't know what happened with him. I don't know if they have enough, if they could re-sign him under the cap. I don't know the rules, but they need to re-sign that guy. Which is, you don't want your season coming down to we need to re-sign Andre Blatch.
That's true. That's a very good point.
But who's their third?
Brooklyn Nets fans are shuddering right now hearing you say that.
Yeah, but who's their third guard in the rotation? Like I like the trade because, if the owner says we want to win right now, okay, you do the trade, you mortgage your future, you trade all those picks. But I mean, who's comes off the bench? Name one guy.
I mean, they were saying that they're looking at 3-point shooters like Kyle Korver might.
Oh yeah, Kyle Korver's gonna come in there and fix everything.
Well, no, I'm saying if you get a guy like Korver, you can plug him into the starting five, and then Joe Johnson comes off the bench. I don't know. They're going to need some stopgaps. I mean, listen, the Heat showed us, and obviously they have LeBron and Wade and Bosh, or as I like to think of him, Sam Perkins 2.0.
I don't agree with that analogy, by the way. I think everyone keeps saying Bosh is like Perkins. I don't think that's the case. Perkins couldn't move. He was fat. He was a very fat player. Bosh can run up the floor.
His career was fat. I mean, he was a spot-up 3-point shooter.
Yeah, maybe.
Bosh is a good defensive player.
Yeah.
But regardless, the Heat didn't have much of a bench. I mean, Birdman did for them, and Battier was in and out of London. Norris Cole was in and out.
I think that's a myth, but I like the Heat bench. I mean, Haslam as a 15-minute a game guy, that's great. He came off the bench. Anderson, like you said. I think benches sometimes you really just need 3 guys off the bench and you're set, at least for the playoffs. But that can't really be determined until later in the season.
Yeah.
The rosters really change a lot.
Can you imagine Garnett and Lopez having a conversation?
Well, Lopez would probably be shaking in his boots to talk to Garnett. But
Garnett is like such a tough, serious guy. Lopez is so goofy. He likes, I think he likes Disney characters, like Disney movies or something.
You know what though? But he's pairing up Garnett with Darren Williams is a great kind of match because Williams, he never had a guy like Garnett with him, and I think he's going to appreciate the intensity that Garnett will bring. But the interesting thing about the Nets is now with the coach, Jason Kidd. Do you think that if they had made this trade 2 weeks ago, they would have signed Kidd to coach them? Do you think Billy King would still have signed him?
That's a good question. I don't know because he's going to have a handful. He's got a lot of egos in that locker room now.
Oh yeah, this is a classic, veteran, overpaid, professional team. I don't know. I don't see. The thing with Kidd is that I know that he can be a good coach one day. It just nobody talks about how I feel like he's a little bit shady in the sense that he's had kind of very murky elements to his career over and over, and the media has kind of given him a pass. And I mean, I'm not. He forced his way out of a few teams back when he was younger. And he clashed with some coaches and whatnot. And I'm not even talking about his private problems with domestic abuse, but Mark Cuban claimed that he went back on his word, right? I think to re-sign with them. And then with the Knicks, he signed a 3-year deal. after the first year he leaves. Now he comes to the Nets to coach them. Do you think
the Knicks were thanking their lucky stars that he decided to retire after that horrid performance in the playoffs? I mean, he not been shot for 9 games or something? I mean, it's a pretty precipitous drop.
Yes, but they would have been happy if he would have asked to be an assistant coach under Woodson. You know what I mean? It's just kind of jarring to watch this guy, go from suiting up to wearing a suit as a coach. Literally like a day later, it was funny. I don't know. I don't know if I trust his character enough. I mean, this guy had a DUI a year ago. Isn't that crazy? Like, how could you be the 40-year-old kind of? He was a captain also of the Knicks, I believe, and he had a DUI matters. Like if a coach got a DUI, it's a big deal. Or a prospective coach who gets a DUI, that's
Yeah, think about it. Andre Blatch obviously has a murky recent past of his own, and he's out in the clubs with Jason Kidd.
Wait, what did Blatch do? Remind me.
He had some sort of sexual assault situation.
Oh, right. No, but I think he was cleared. I think.
He was cleared, but he doesn't have the best friends around him. Let's just say, not a great group.
He made a bad choice in the groupie, is what you're saying.
Something like that. Tangentially, I have a coworker who told me he was walking on 8th Avenue and 43rd Street. There's a Westin Hotel. And a lot of the NBA teams, when they come to New York to play the Knicks or the Nets, they stay there because, it's very close to the Garden and close to Brooklyn, too. So he said on Thursday night, he walked over to by the Westin Hotel, and he said there were tons and tons of groupies staying there, for the draft, in anticipation of the draft. And he used some very colorful language in saying that they were extremely attractive ladies, and that he enjoyed his little stroll down 8th Avenue that day.
Were they
I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
They were hanging out in the lobby, these women?
They were hanging out in the lobby. They were asking one of the concierges what time the draft is. The draft was in the Barclays Center.
Right, which is far from
They were
that.
asking all these questions about who was staying there. Those NBA groupies are armed and dangerous.
Oh yeah.
They have all the information they need. They know they go after what they want, and they're vixens.
Think about how crazy that is, though. You come back from a night of whatever, and you walk into the hotel lobby at 3 a.m. You're drunk, whatever, and then some girl wearing nothing comes up to you. Like, what are you supposed to do? It's like a trap,
Well, Joe Smalltalk, what do you think you would do in that situation? You were a 19-year-old NBA draft pick, come back, and it's 3 in the morning, and the Westin Hotel, and a beautiful, 25-year-old woman comes over to you and wants to hang out. What do you say?
I would call Coach Kidd immediately and ask him for advice on what to do. And he wouldn't answer the phone because he'd be in another room with another friend.
Right. He got into the hotel 10 minutes earlier. He's out for the night.
Yeah, I mean, does Kidd still go out to clubs? I don't know. I mean, if he's getting DUIs a year ago, I don't want him coaching my team. Everyone talks about character. What about the coach?
Well, more importantly, whatever happened to Jason Kidd's son, who had a mustache at 3?
You remember that, huh?
Yeah, they would always show him during the games when he was on the Nets. The kid had a mustache. His kid had a mustache at 3 or 4, am I wrong?
Something like that. Anyways, we veered a little bit off topic, but that's okay because it's all relevant. We were talking about the draft. We were going down the list a little bit, and so Ben McLemore, slipped to the Sacramento Kings. Now, nobody criticized the Kings for taking him because it was an obvious kind of choice. McLemore was a potential number 1 pick who was around at 7. Noel and Len were just taken. So they had to take him. But in terms of character and in terms of a guy who has an iffy background and, I guess questions about character and also, some coaches said he lacked the killer instinct. And here he is showing up to training camp with the Sacramento Kings. That might be the worst franchise for him to join, right? The worst roster to kind of take part of in the NBA.
Well, I'm just imagining DeMarcus Cousins texting him right after the
Who's Cousins?
draft the pick is announced. DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh, Cousins, yeah.
Texting him right after the pick is announced, saying meet me at such and such, the best Sacramento strip club. Can't you see that happening?
Yeah, well, now that Shaq is mentoring Cousins, I don't think he'll be texting him that late at night. You heard that Shaq is mentoring him, no?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did hear that.
Look,
I don't know if Shaq is.
It's a new franchise now under Vivek Ranadiev.
Vivek. Everybody loves Vivek.
Oh yeah, because the previous ownership was so shoddy. Those idiot twins. I mean, they were the most poorly run franchise that I remember in maybe the last 15 years.
They're numbskulls. Two numbskulls, the Maloof brothers.
Right. But so look, I guess the organization is changing, but still, the players are just in terms of getting shots off. I mean, how's McLemore going to fit in there with all those chuckers on that team?
Tyreek Evans, yeah. I mean, he's a little bit redundant with Evans. I know that they just offered the qualifying offer to Tyreek. Is that true? I think they did.
Well, I'm sure they did, but that doesn't mean anything because he's going to ask for a lot more money. He probably thinks he's a $11 million player, but we all know that he's a flawed player, and I don't think he fits in.
He's a restricted free agent, though. Can't they match?
Yeah, they can match anything, but all it takes is some, stupid organization, maybe the Bucks, to offer him that money. And
if I'm the Kings, I don't resign Tyreek Evans.
Nah, I don't think he fits in.
I've seen enough.
Yeah, I think then they get. I mean, who's their starting point guard again? Remind me, I'm forgetting. Is it because Evans played more shooting guard? I feel like down the stretch.
I can't remember who exactly played. Well, Evans played a little bit of point guard down the stretch.
He did, but he was such an ineffective point guard because he couldn't distribute the ball. I mean, he was great at slashing and cutting to the basket, but they need somebody, a facilitator, to get the ball to Cousins and now to McLemore. I don't know, but
Isaiah Thomas was their
Thomas, right. Yeah, I mean
he's pretty good. I mean, he's a shooter though too. He's a shoot first point guard.
Right, that is correct.
Another interesting thing from the draft. We can get back to Ben McLemore in a second because I think he is very interesting.
No worries.
So, aside from McLemore, what do you think about the Knicks taking Hardaway at that slot?
I read a funny blurb actually for one of the ESPN writers. I think when Hardaway was taken, a fan sitting next to the writer said, "Tim Hardaway, are you fucking kidding me?" And like, it's funny because it's like, I guess you can roll your eyes because it's Hardaway's son, but he's a good shooter, as you probably know, right?
He's a great shooter. He's tough. Played in a lot of big games, and I don't know. It has to help somewhat that his dad was kind of an iconic, not iconic player, but like a really, really, he's an all-star 5 times. His dad, that's gotta help. That's gotta count for something,
Yeah, but his dad, people forget, was a pariah for a while after making those homophobic comments a few years ago. People kind of forgot about that. It's not really relevant at all, to be honest, to his son, but I just feel like bringing it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the pick for the Knicks. I don't know who else they could have taken. They need somebody to stretch the floor. And I saw that the other day. They tried out Sean Williams again. Bring back Sean Williams for tryouts. You know that they're slim pickings.
Well, Williams fleeced the Nets because he had a great season with the Knicks. They couldn't afford him. The Nets gave him, I think, a few $1 million, and he was terrible. He was just dreadful, and they cut him. And now he's a free agent and looking for another contract. So, on a 1-year deal, he's fine. You want a guy like that on a 1-year deal, but not more than that.
I don't know. I have nothing against the pick because for whatever that was, the 24th pick. But what do you like any of the other kind of late first round or mid first round? What do you think about Trey Burke?
Well, I don't know if you saw, but the funny thing about Burke, after he was drafted, they interviewed him. I forget who it was, but he looked pissed off that he was going to Timberwolves. And one of the guys had a good joke on Twitter. I think it might have been Chat Ford, I'm not sure, but they're saying after he was drafted by the T-Wolves, they said, I thought David Kahn was fired. Why are they drafting another point guard?
Yeah, I mean...
it's funny, no?
Listen, Kahn left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I can just imagine Kahn watching the draft and, throwing his chair across the room,
Yeah, and you know what? He would have taken Trey Burke. That's the joke. And he would not have traded him to the Utah Jazz afterwards. Another funny kind of understory was Mo Williams said that he's not giving up the starting point guard position that easily, which is funny in itself. Where were you a year ago? I mean, he's a former All-Star, but
if it's funny because he's so irrelevant. And,
Right. I don't think they have any plans to re-sign him even. I mean, they might, but not for any significant money. That's for sure.
Yeah, supposedly the Jazz like shoot first point guards for years. I mean, they like Darren Williams to shoot first point guard. Mo Williams to shoot first point guard. And Trey Burke is also a shoot first point guard.
Yeah. Don't forget Derek Fisher.
Yeah, for a few minutes, a little cup of coffee.
Yeah, a quick blurb about Fisher. Remember he got out of that contract because he said his daughter had vision problems and he wanted to be close to her? Fisher really, he's kind of like the Doc Rivers of the players because he's got away with some shady crap in the past and he doesn't get called out. I mean, that was the thing with Utah. But then, I think with Dallas, right, this past year, he told Cuban that, what did he tell Cuban again? To get out of his deal?
He needed to spend more time with his family.
Right.
So Cuban graciously let him out of his contract, and then a few weeks later, he signs with Oklahoma City.
Was it 2 weeks later? And which means he was probably talking to them beforehand, obviously. Yeah, I mean, Fisher's a shady guy.
Thing, Fisher is the president of the he's very active in the players' union.
I'll tell you who doesn't like Fisher.
So guys like that.
Billy Hunter definitely doesn't like Derek Fisher, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, lost his job because of it.
Yeah, but you know what? Fisher...
I don't know. I mean... Yeah, go ahead.
He's gonna have his pick of being either a GM or a coach one day because, he's been around so long, he's won rings, and he's respected. But whatever, enough about Derek Fisher and the Utah Jazz. Look, Trey Burke played well.
What do you think?
In the tournament for them until the end. I guess it was kind of surprising he slipped that low. But
yeah, I mean he's a great scorer. He can score in the league. He's got range from past half court. He's a little small, but he goes to the basket. He's tough. I don't know. If I were I would have taken him ahead of some of these big stiffs like Zeller or. That's just me. I mean, I didn't really see Kentavious Caldwell-Pope play, but Jalen Rose had a funny line actually during the draft. He said that this guy Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, the Greek 6'10" point guard who wants to play right away and he wants playing time in the NBA. That's what I know about him.
Yeah. So Jalen Rose said, "There's no way anyone's going to call him that. They're going to call him Bo." Veterans in the NBA will just call him Bo. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, but you mentioned stiffs. Do you think is Steven Adams? What do you think about that pick? I mean, is he a stiff? I was kind of surprised that, this was basically the James Harden pick, right? Oklahoma City at number 12. They actually had some options. They could have taken another guy we haven't spoken about yet, but Shabazz Muhammad was available. I don't know. I mean, Steven Adams, he shot 44% from the free throw line as a freshman last year. That's kind of shocking. And, a guy who you can't have on the floor late in the game, they just experienced that with Kendrick Perkins. Why do you take a guy like Steven Adams? Do you think he fits in? How does he fit into their kind of planning?
A few reasons. Supposedly Steven Adams was a top 10 guy coming out of the high school draft class.
Okay.
Out of the high school class, meaning that, he didn't play much at Pittsburgh.
He played at least 20 minutes a game. He got some time.
He wasn't playing, he wasn't playing 33 minutes a game.
I don't know. You have to wonder.
Also, the Thunder is very, very conscious of character issues. And Shabazz Muhammad has been behind by his age. He's got a whole mess of issues right now, and the Thunder don't mess around with that.
Right, but at some point, if the Spurs were drafting at that point, don't you think they would have taken a guy like Muhammad? I mean, if the structure's in place, guys like Durant, who are respected NBA kind of veterans by now, I feel like a guy like Muhammad would fall into place and play his role. I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, these guys have interviews with all the hot shots at the different teams, and supposedly Steven Adams is a really gregarious personality. It's really funny and engaging. That's got to count for something. I could see a team mistakenly taking a guy just because he's fun to have around instead of a talented player. No.
Well, that's how what's his name Brian Scalabrine got made. I think $30 million in his NBA career. For being a good character guy.
Yeah. I'm looking at some of the later picks from the draft. C.J. McCollum, I mean, he wasn't a later pick. He was number 10. Everyone seems to love him. He was a really good scorer in college before he got hurt, and he had that big game against Duke.
Yeah.
The previous year in the tournament where they won. But, I think Jeff Withey, he was the Kansas center. He went in the second round to the Blazers. I thought he was good. When I watched him in the tournament, he protected the rim. He's got some moves around the basket. I think that guy can actually play. I don't know.
Yeah, you think that guy hangs out with McLemore after games? I don't think...
No.
They were in Kansas together.
I think Withey might have rolled his eyes when McLemore, said hi to his brother in that initial interview right after the draft. But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the list. There's some notable names taken in the second round, like Peyton Siva from Louisville.
Yeah, well, don't forget the biggest name of the second round, in my opinion, is Glenn Rice Jr. from the NBDL.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand that, how he went from the NBDL to the draft. I'm missing something here. And did you understand that?
I don't really know how that happened either.
They never really explained it either. But another name of the second round, how come nobody talks about Colton Iverson having the same last name as Allen Iverson? I mean, that is not a common name. Nobody talked about that either. I mean, right? What's going on there?
Well, you think that's a big deal?
It's not a big deal, but just like, at least make a joke, something. Not related to Allen Iverson, at least for idiots like me who don't know what's going on. But what do you think about Bojan?
Colton is a 7-foot center, though.
It's true, 7-foot center. Also white, so it's kind of funny. But what do you think about Bojan Dublajovic from Serbia? Chad Ford probably had a binder.
I went down to Serbia last year. I caught him in a I caught him in a tournament.
Do you think he's going to be better than Janis Tima?
Serbia last year.
Janis Tima from Latvia was taken 60th. There's a lot of sleepers here, a lot of stuff.
Simmons has the whole theory about guys with names being like slam dunks if they have a good name. A guy like the Rockets took in the second round, Isaiah Canaan. That guy sounds like, it sounds first of all like he's straight out of the Bible.
Right.
Isaiah Canaan. But
he actually was on the Knicks radar for a while.
That's a good name.
Yeah, the Knicks talked about taking him, but yeah. And this guy, the guy who the Spurs took. Let's talk about that for a second. Livio Jean Charles. From France, taken right after the other French guy, and that confused the two.
Yeah.
I know one of them was I think the second coming of like a poor man's Nerlens Noel, which I don't know what that means, because Nerlens Noel is kind of a poor man of,
Nerlens is seeming pretty poor these days.
Well, he lost a lot of money by slipping. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Spurs, there are teams like the Spurs and the Thunder, I always default to thinking that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, but I think they get carried away. I mean, this guy that the Spurs took, this French guy, I mean, yeah, he's from France. I just think, okay, they got Parker from France 10 years ago and with the late pick. They'll take this guy. Who knows what he'll be. But we don't really know. There's no way to know.
It's smart because they stash him in Europe. They don't have to pay any, no cap holds. Nothing comes off their cap.
Right. I'm curious what's going to happen with the guy, the Greek guy, Bo. Who I think the Bucks took him. He demanded. He said he wants to. I think he has to be bought out of his contract with Greece, and he said he wants to play right away in the NBA. And he was a classic guy who they wanted to kind of. You wanted to stay in Europe, obviously, and get better, and then come over when he was ready. Kind of like Thiago Splitter. Remember Thiago Splitter? Every year he was supposed to come over from Europe and be this revolutionary big man. The Spurs had drafted him, and every year waiting and waiting. Finally, he came over, and he's okay. I think he's a role player. Starting center, but not for more than 25 minutes a game. But
didn't the Magic have a guy like that they took a long time ago with like the 10th or 11th pick?
Vasquez, maybe.
Yeah, that was Fran Vasquez.
Fran Vasquez.
Was he in the league this year?
I don't even know. Who knows? I don't know. I think he was friends with Dwight Howard, though. I think they went out together.
How did they become friends?
I once, off topic, I don't know if you remember, I once prank called Keith Smart in his hotel room, and I pretended to be, who's that French guy? Oh, Michael Petrius. I pretended to be Petrius. and I complained about. This is actually when Keith Smart was coaching. I think he was an assistant coach on the We Believe Warriors 2007, and Patriots was on that team, but he was on the bench, and I complained that Baron Davis wasn't passing him the ball and whatnot. I don't think Smart. Well, the same way that your friend knows that all those NBA players were staying in that hotel on 8th Avenue, in each city there's like one or two kind of primary hotels, which 5-star hotels, which players stay at, and you call up and you ask to speak to whoever, and the assistant coaches never change their names because they don't expect any phone calls. So, anyways,
they don't expect idiots like you
no.
to call them frankly acting like they're Michael Peters. I mean, that's pretty inventive.
Yeah. Anyways, who do you think? Who's the best? Who do you think is going to be the most impactful player next year from the draft? Right now, one player.
If I had to guess, it's a good question. I like your.
Don't say Oladipo. Don't say Oladipo.
If I had to say one guy, you meaning let's say who's going to be the rookie of the year next year?
I guess that's what I'm asking. Who's going to put up the most stats, which is usually good enough for rookie of the year? It seems like these days.
Honestly, I might go with Trey Burke.
Trey Burke.
He's on the Jazz.
Right.
He'll put up numbers. He can score. I mean, he can score 15 points a game. I don't see why not.
Right. Well, I guess looking at
and the rest of the guys. I mean, Anthony Bennett. Who knows? All the rest are such question marks. Oladipo is not going to score enough to be a rookie of the year type of player.
Well, it comes down to playing time also in terms of impact, and I think Bennett's going to get his fair share of minutes right off the bat. So I guess because he's the number one pick, they're going to give him more playing time. It's kind of like circular logic, but that will help him put up numbers. But yeah, if Burke gets the starting nod, if they don't re-sign Mo Williams, and he gets as many touches as he wants, then you might be right. Actually, I think Cody Zeller will get some playing time as well. If he's competing against Bismack Biyombo and I think Alan Henderson is the other forward in that team.
Yeah, I'd be interested actually to see who's what Vegas says are the odds for NBA Rookie of the Year. I'm trying to look it up as we speak, but
I actually won. I won last year. I bet on Lillard to win. It was I think 4-1 odds or 5-1 odds, and I made bank with that. So I should be giving you the tips, my friend.
How much did you win?
Don't worry about how much I won. But I'll tell you.
You and I tangentially just came back from Las Vegas a few weeks back. We didn't. We should have put some money down on some NBA picks.
What, they had betting on the draft?
Probably not on the draft, but I'm sure you could have gotten a bet for 2014 NBA championship or something. Yeah,
right.
Kind of bet you can imagine.
One final thing I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up here. Basically, with this NBA draft, and as with any NBA draft, there are teams that want to get better, but there are also teams that want to get worse. And particularly this year, with the soon-to-be legendary 2013 draft with Wiggins and Parker and a few other guys, this was a competition to see who can get worse. And Boston impressively got a lot worse. Philadelphia got worse. Who do you think is going to be the worst team in the NBA next year, which will then put them in position to get possibly one of the best draft picks in ages?
That's an interesting question. I mean, just looking down the list of the teams that picked in the top 10, the Cavs always have Kyrie Irving, so they could play a little bit better. He could be out. He's very brittle himself.
Nah, they'll compete though. Cleveland's
games. Yeah.
They're going for the playoffs. Cleveland. I'm talking about real people. I don't know, 15-win teams. I mean, Boston has no one on the roster right now except for Rondo.
Boston, you're right. Rondo could be a trade. Traded at the deadline at this point. Who knows? Everything's up for grabs, I think, with the Celtics. I think you agree.
Let me ask you, do you think that Boston could trade Rondo for to one of these terrible teams for an unprotected 2014 draft pick? I mean, that could happen, no?
That's interesting. I think these teams are going to be very, very careful about trading, unprotected top 3 picks. Because listen, from everything people say, Wiggins could be the next McGrady or a LeBron type. You don't want to trade away that pick and then be known forever as having traded that pick away. I mean, even the other guys, Jabari Parker could be a Hall of Fame level player. Julius Randle supposedly is really, really good. So there's a lot of guys in that area. But how about the Bobcats? They could 100% be the worst team in the league again.
Right. Well, that's why I was confused with the Zeller pick, because he's a guy who's going to contribute sooner than Noel and Len, but they took him, meaning they're going to probably win a few more games had they taken Noel or Len. But yeah, the Bobcats need to compete for the worst pick. I mean, they need to have the worst record again next year. That's why I was surprised that they fired that guy, the high school coach who they hired. That next year's draft is the draft. I don't care. If you come to Jordan right now and if Stern came to Jordan and said, "I can promise you 38 wins and a 8th seed in the playoffs, or 15 wins and a 25% chance of the first pick," he's going with the first pick. The 25% chance. I don't know. Charlotte might be creeping into 28 to 29 win territory if Zeller can give them decent numbers, and that's not good. You don't want to win 28 games next year. You want to win 18 games. And Boston, I think, if they take their time bringing back Rondo and limit his minutes, I think Boston is in contention with Philadelphia to be the worst team in the league.
How about the Sixers? I mean, the Sixers traded for Noel, who's not going to play until at least, January? Maybe?
Yeah, no, Philadelphia definitely. I mean, they traded Drew Holiday. Carter Williams, if they're going to give him the starting position, he's going to go through some growing pains. He might shoot under 40%. He reminds me of Khalid El-Amin. You remember that guy? I mean, I know he's better than him, but a defensive guy who can pass and not shoot well.
Khalid El-Amin was a tubby shoot first point guard, but I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I always found it crazy how Khalid El-Amin was cut at I think towards the end of the year, and I think he may have made the rookie game right in the All-Star weekend. I think he was the only player in history to get cut in the same season as making the All-Star rookie game. Nobody talks about that. That's kind of crazy in retrospect.
Yeah, I think he was playing in Europe for a while afterwards because he was a good player. Yeah, that's interesting. I thought it also the fact that the Sixers took Noel. Basically it's saying that they're not going to take Bynum now. I mean, why take a second, 7-footer who's very brittle himself. We've been using the word brittle a lot during this podcast.
A lot of brittle players, yeah.
But wouldn't it be interesting, and one of my friends told me this the other day, wouldn't it be interesting if Howard leaves the Lakers and Bynum goes back to the Lakers? Lakers already know him. They can give him a 1-year deal with not much to lose. Kobe already knows him. He knows the lay of the land there. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, that's not bad. We'll talk about that more in the next podcast, which will be on free agency. But no, that's not a bad idea. I don't know. I doubt they've reached out to him even. Who knows? I mean, Bynum came off as such a clown this past year with the afro and the bowling, and I mean, he's a clown. What team wants to touch that guy? I mean, I know he's a 2010 guy and he can help you in the playoffs, but come on, I don't know.
He's a 7-footer. I mean, you can't teach height.
Another line, by the way. One last thing, another line in addition to you can't teach height, I heard over this past weekend, you can't teach blood, because they were talking about all the, Glenn Rice Jr. and Tim Hardaway Jr. And
that's stupid. That's so stupid.
You know what? Yes and no. Dwayne Wade's son is the best 5th grade prospect in the world, apparently, or in America.
I watched a YouTube video.
Oh yeah.
Dwayne Wade's son the other day. I was mesmerized.
Can he dunk?
He's incredible.
I believe it. Yeah. By the way, Shane Larkin. I read that he's Barry Larkin's son. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Nobody talks about that.
No, they talked about it a lot during the NCAA tournament. Back to our Vegas trip for a second. It would have been great if we went during the Summer League, which is coming up. But wouldn't that have been fantastic? We could do a remote podcast from Vegas about seeing Corey Brewer at the blackjack table in the Luxor.
Oh, you saw him at the blackjack table, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They would cook us out of the gym, us two idiots recording a hack of a podcast in front of these guys. Excuse me, Mr. Larkin, an interview, please.
We'd be banned from XS for life.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that's about it. We didn't talk about Nemanja Nedović from Serbia, drafted number 30th by the Phoenix Suns. Thoughts on him?
Good player.
You have no idea. Neither of us do. I just.
Yeah, I don't know one thing about him.
I just think it's funny. You mentioned before, just in terms of the name, like you can take any tall guy from Europe and slap a crazy name on him and create some video of him, some workout video of knocking down jump shots, and he will enter somebody's draft radar. Definitely Chad Ford's. He may not be drafted, but he'll come on people's radar, and I think it's funny.
I could see you setting up a covert Gmail account.
You know what?
Emailing Chad Ford and saying, I know of a guy. He plays in Nigeria. Nobody knows about him. You got to get down here and check him out.
You know what's funny? I'm 6'5", okay, and you know what? 6'4.5". I could, bleach my hair, and I look young. I could record a video and edit it carefully of me only swishing shots, which and send it to Chad Ford and give a crazy name. And write that I'm from, who knows where, Croatia or whatever, some small town.
Macedonia. Your name is Boris Krivichev.
Boris Krivichev would be looked at by the Spurs and the Bucks. And the Spurs would sniff it out, but the Bucks would draft him. That's what I know.
The three-point shooter, need to add some weight. Playing against men in, in Macedonia.
16-year-old. I was a professional on a professional team at 16. I support my family.
Funny, I'm sure Chad Ford gets those emails constantly.
You think so? From idiots?
I don't know about from idiots, but I'm sure sometimes he gets emails about just random guys who, are high school level talents. Nothing special. But he's got to pay attention to everything because he can't be behind the curve.
Right. Well, he has to discover the next Jan Vesley or Zarko Kabakapa.
It would be a great YouTube video too if you made a workout video of you against a chair, just like you remember Janlian?
Janlian, of course, yeah.
Dominated.
The chairman, yeah.
The chairman, yeah.
Anyways, on that note, Johnny the salesman, thank you for your commentary.
Anytime, here please.
And we'll do a free agency podcast in a few days from now. We got a lot more to cover. I want to talk about.
Absolutely. I'm here.
All right. Keep your towel on. I'll see you then.
All right, man.